blue sky, so feel free to come say hi. So to start with, in this day and age, we rely a lot on online tools and services. This can be anything ranging from previously the chat client, messaging applications, password manager, media streaming services, spreadsheets, note-taking software. As you can see, these are a lot of services. But then it's very convenient because we just have to sign up for the services and then we can use them right away without having to think much about the underlying infrastructure or the maintenance overhead we have to take into account when we spin up and operate these services. But then again, this means that we have to trust someone to maintain and manage our data. This can be anything from picking where the data should be located, back it up if necessary, and restore it, migrate it, which means someone has to have access to our data. It's not a bad thing in itself, but in a way, we don't really know to the full extent of what they do with our data. So for example, if you use a music streaming website, of course they are going to analyze your listening patterns to serve you personalized recommendations, and that's a good thing because in a way it makes the service more interesting because it can serve you random music that seem to be fitting the mood you are in today. So it's great in that sense, but then again, the service might be sharing your data with someone else that you may or may not agree to. So if you are conscious about this, you probably have to pick a service where there's more transparency. But then again, if you prefer to have total control over your data, you can probably consider self-hosting, which I'll get into in a bit. So the good thing about some of this is that for some services, they allow you to export your data. So for example, if you heard the name Google, Google has a service known as Google Takeout where you can submit a request to export your data, and then it will send you the link in a bit where you can download your data and do anything you want with it. But then again, not all services offer this service because it means developers have to spend more time and resources on developing this feature. But then again, not all services can justify the existence of this feature. So in a way, it's not always bad. It's just that if you care that you have access to the data in a service you are using, you probably have to look for the service where this option is possible for you to take. But then again, not all of your data in the platform will be exported. So for example, if you are someone who say you are active a lot on mobile and application, okay, if you're on Android or iOS, there's the application tracking where it tells you which application you open the most, spend the most time on, which time of day, so it's good. But if you're so active on the website as well, maybe you don't get the same tracking you get on the mobile platforms. And so if you want to cross-reference on how active you are on each platform, maybe you are not out of luck because granted, not many people probably interested in this data, and so it's possible that the service provider may not allow you to export this data to analyze yourself. So this means that for services, of course, they're going to log when you access and where you access a service from. So if you prefer to have this data be readily available for you to visualize, you probably have to entertain the idea of managing the service yourself so you can access this data. But then again, which brings to the point in terms of what can we do about it, is in the talk title. So the good thing is that self-hosting is a widely adopted practice and is very popular compared to 5 years ago when I started on this journey. So the great news is that there's a lot of resources online for you to take on and listen to, and then you can follow the tutorials, which are very easy to follow nowadays. And there are many pre-made OSs where you can just install this, set up the domain, and then you can start spinning the service right away, and the backups are taken care of. Things are better than when back then we had to install stuff manually with the LAMP stack, if you can remember how painful it was. Okay, so but go back a little bit. If you think about application and data persistent, we are talking about mostly a three-tier application layer where there's a front-end layer which can be translated to the front end on the website or the mobile app or the desktop application, which then talks to the back end, which is the layer that talks to the data layer, in which the data layer can be consisted of the storage and database, in which the storage is what we use to store music, audios, images, anything that's not tabular data or related format. So if we can replicate this setup in our own hardware, then we can have the self-hosting setup in which if we go to the definition of self-hosting, it essentially means that we are setting up, managing the services on our hardware or infrastructure. It doesn't have to be a physical hardware. It can be a VPS as well, but it has to be something that you own and can control. And then you can choose what to install and what to maintain and manage. So I wrote a primer on how to get started with self-hosting. Feel free to check it out, and I hope it's useful to you. Okay. So following a few open source alternatives, these are some of the lists I find very useful that I use day to day, but there's more. I'll provide the link for the whole directory at the end. Okay, so firstly, I think we can agree on that this day and age, we have a lot of online accounts. It can be anything from shopping websites, media streaming, social media, and what have you. It's a lot of burden for us to remember everything. And if we use the same password for every account, I think hackers would love you, but I don't think we need that kind of love, okay? So this service, Warden, is an implementation of a Bitwarden protocol. The good thing about this is that you can continue using the existing Bitwarden application from desktop, web browser extensions, and mobile application. And you just have to point the server endpoint to the Warden instance. And the great thing about this is that you can get the paid features for free, namely two-factor authentication and integration with the Have I Been Pawned website to check whether your password was leaked or dumped. The second one is music streaming. The good thing about this is that music streaming has been existed for a long time. Maybe you're familiar with the name Subsonic. Navidrome stands on the Subsonic API, which is a de facto standard for the music streaming protocol in the open source world. So the great thing about this is that you can continue using the existing ecosystem and applications for Subsonic. Anything that's Subsonic compatible, you can use Navidrome with. And the application is written in Golang, which consumes minimal resources, and it's very easy to spin up. Just point the configuration to your music directory, and you're good to go. And it doesn't take long at all to scan your full directory. And we really can't miss the video streaming solution. So maybe you heard the name SBMC. That was pretty ancient by this point. But Jellyfin works online and also supports many formats. And you can also access it from the native web, mobile, and desktop clients. And the great thing about this is that it can also transcode the video on the fly as well if your client doesn't support the format. And it also has the group play feature where you can have multiple users logging in at the same time and watch the same video at the same time. And also, it's very easy to set up just single container, single application. Just point it to the media directory, and it will automatically scan and organize everything for you. So this one is for photo management. So if you are taking a lot of photos and want to organize them, image is a great choice because it allows you to manage photos in an album-like format or tag formats. Also has a built-in machine learning system where you tag the faces of persons in the photo so you can easily search for them. You can also set your mobile application, the image one, to auto-upload photos to the service, which means you don't have to manually copy the photos from your phone or tablet to the service. And the great thing about this is that you can also share the album as well, either with or without password protection, so you can share it with friends and family. Okay. And in this day and age, we can all agree that there's many news to consume from. And back then, there's a Google Reader, and I really missed it. But then this one scratched the itch nicely because it's a very light and minimal feed reader. So you just add the RSS feed to the service, and then it will aggregate everything for you. And the good thing about this is that the web page itself is very light, only 100 kilobytes. So it's very easy to load from slow internet. So over time, when you read a lot of news, you may find that something you want to save to read for later because it's a long form article. Waterback allows you to save the article, and it will present the article into the clean format for you to download. It also has integrations with the e-reader app, so you can download the article straight away to your e-reader apps. Over time, you may also find that you want to take notes of the services. So this one, think of it as a Google Google Keep alternatives, but with support to Markdown. And you can also attach photos and files as well. But you can also share the notes as a link to other people as a read-only as well. So I personally use it to scratch first the rough idea, and then I send it to my friends to validate it before I further work on the idea. And over time, I also use a lot of devices and mobile devices as well. And sometimes I use company machine. I find it easy if I have a single website to take notes of all my bookmarks and manage it. So LinkedIn allows you to add multiple bookmarks to the website, and then you can organize it with tags as well. And you can also access it via the API as well. You have some workflows you want to automate it later on. And lastly, if you are working in some industries where there's regulations where you can use online services or third-party services that's not within the on-premise perimeter, you may consider Umami as the analytics solution. And the great thing about this is that it has all the basic features for analytics, and the tracking script is very light. It's less than 3 kilobytes. So it's very fast to load on the slow internet as well. Okay. Oh, sorry. Okay. So these are some, but not the extensive list. So feel free to check out the open source alternative TO for more lists. The good thing about this website is that it allows you to choose the service that you are familiar with, and then it represents you with the alternative for these services. Okay, so thank you for listening to my talk, and the slides can be downloaded at my website. Thank you.
Thank you, Karn. Before I get into Q&A, Augustine, are you in the room? Right, can you please go and talk to these gentlemen over on your right about the screen? Sorry? You already spoke? Okay, but can you get your stuff onto the screen so that we can end Q&A? Right. Questions for Karn? Comments? Okay.
Which of these services are you running yourself?
Actually, and more than this as well. I have my setup is a Kubernetes cluster at home on Intel NUC, and I have maybe a few dozens managed by Terraform. I have a repo on my GitHub, so you can check it out.
Very cool.
So you mentioned your self-hosting. Is that on the VPS?
I used to host on the VPS. Actually, some of my services are on the VPS as well for something that has to be on all the time, such as the analytics or VPN. But for other services, it's on my home server, Intel NUC at my home. So it runs on NetIP.
And do you have any kind of recommendations on how you would set that up in your home server to kind of segment it off from your home network for security-related reasons?
There are many ways you can secure your setup, but personally, my setup is that I have a single machine where I deploy my workloads on it, and then I use another machine solely as a reverse proxy server, and that one is the one that will be exposed to port 80 and 443 something on the router. So when you access my server, it will point to a dynamic DNS, which points to the port 80 and 443 something on my router. And that reverse proxy will redirect to actual workloads on another machine. But you can also do other fancy stuff as well.
Are you ever, God, not again. Are you ever encountering performance limits with the stuff that's hosted at home, bandwidth or latency?
Yeah, so I used to put a Grafana on it. So I put 32 gigabyte of RAM on the machine, so that's pretty fine actually. Mostly because you are the only one using the service itself, so the main predictor of how well it's going to run is the amount of memory of the service, because the CPU is going to be idle most of the time.
And you've got enough upstream bandwidth from your ISP?
Yes, mostly the most bandwidth consuming gonna be media streaming, but then again it works fine with the my bandwidth allowed for home network.
Yeah, good stuff. All right, we've still got time for at least one more question. Questions, comments, thoughts? Who's currently, okay, we've got an extra question, so. There's activity.
Do you store all those services on one server, or do you have some sort of...
It can be any setup you want. So previously I had a multi-node Kubernetes cluster, but then I consolidated into a single cluster. But then again, there are some services I prefer to have it available all the time in case of power outage. So for analytics and VPN, I put it on a VPS, but the rest is on my home server. But it depends on what you prefer to be able to go down if there's power interruption, or what you prefer to be on all the time.
Oh, yeah, one more wafer-thin question.
Did you ever have any issues integrating one service to another? So, for example, you mentioned about a Jellyfin and a photo organizer, and like when you have your data, you want them to talk to each other. How would you do that?
So you mean if I have to migrate the data, right? Migrate between service or migrate data for the same service but different hardware?
I mean, you may have the same data. Let's say you have a Nextcloud installed.
Okay, cool.
So you have a folder with videos, but now you wanted the videos to be visible in Jellyfin.
Oh, okay.
So you have a lot of integration between services.
Cool. So in this case, if you have your data in Nextcloud or this media, what I would do is I would mount the path in Nextcloud that match the video path to the video path on Jellyfin, so they can access the same data. So, but utilizing volume multi, but your data has to be on the same machine or has to be on the same network volume, so both services can access.
No. Okay, that's about time. Thank you, Karn. Appreciate the talk. We could have some thanks. Put a microphone in one.